If your main goal is aesthetics, then deadlifting is not a good idea. Now, I've deadlifted 465, which is like 3 times my body weight, and it low-key kind of messed me up because when you deadlift that heavy, and especially, for me, like I like going heavy, and I kind of got long arms, kind of got like a deadlift build, and so, I always go heavy. And when you do that, you're using a lot of compensatory movement. And I didn't really have that space to be able to hinge properly. And so it gave me things like anterior pelvic tilt, tibiofemoral external rotation, which we'll get into all that. But it low-key kind of messed me up pretty bad. And overall, it's just really not worth it when you weigh out the benefits to the risks. Basically, when you deadlift, or really any sort of compound movement, but especially for deadlifts, you're creating a lot of compression from front to back, so anterior to posterior compression. And what that's doing is it's going to sort of push your center of gravity forward. And especially for me, it created a lot of anterior pelvic tilt. And what that does is basically limits how much you can externally rotate your hips. And what that's going to do is it's going to create a compensatory external rotation at your tibia. So basically your foot is going to like point outward whilst your knee stays pointing forward. That's going to create knee problems. Because I mean, if I only weigh like 155 pounds and I'm doing 465, like you better believe I'm using some compensatory strategies to lift that weight. And now you might be thinking, oh, well, isn't it just because your back is rounding? But basically, I'm what you call a narrow ISA. So what that means is I can't really hinge properly because I can't get posterior expansion. And this is why it kind of depends from person to person. Some people might not have as many problems with deadlifting, but if you're someone like me who's kind of more like has kind of a smaller build, started off more skinny, etc., then you're probably really good at deadlifting because you got long arms. You can lift a lot of weight, but you're doing it at the sacrifice of potentially your joints and pain and all that kind of stuff, and even your aesthetics. So basically, since I can't open up posteriorly in my pelvis to be able to hinge properly, that's why you're seeing, when I deadlift, I use a lot of compensatory movement through my lower back, and basically that's just, rounding. But really, that's not even the problem, because when people think about like, oh, if deadlifts are bad for you, or like, there's that one quote from that one strong man, I can't remember his name, but he said like, if you don't deadlift for deadlift's sake, then you shouldn't do it at all.
If you're deadlifting to be a better deadlifter, fine. If you're not doing that for deadlift's sake, then don't fucking do it. The risk to reward ratio is a joke.
And then a bunch of people in the fitness space, sort of got mad and were like, no, actually, it's completely safe for your back or whatever. But people don't think past just, oh, if you keep your back straight, you're fine. Like, no, because even if you keep your back straight, you're still going to be using compensatory movement if you're going super heavy. And a lot of these things are like pretty subtle, and it's hard to really tell from the outside. It's just small changes. Because when you use orientation, that's when you're going to be able to produce the most force. And basically, when you like lock joints up and don't allow for relative motion, that's good for force production, like for, deadlifting a lot of weight, because that allows you to not disperse a bunch of force through different joints. So for example, when you really sort of deadlift with an externally rotated position with the weight more on the outside edge of your heels, that's not going to allow your sacrum to nutate and properly hinge with a straight back. And that's kind of what I, used to do a lot. And that's why my back would round. But that would allow me to lift a lot of weight because I'm really locking up joints. Now, obviously, this kind of depends, because if you're someone who can hinge like pretty well, then this might not be as bad for you. But either way, if we're talking about aesthetics, which, by the way, like I said at the beginning, this video is for if you're focused on aesthetics. If you're concerned with powerlifting at all, then this is not for you. Okay, but whatever, who cares if I'm using compensatory movement to lift weight? Either way, I'm going heavy, it's good, whatever. But really, these things can lead to a lot of pain and stuff, which I've definitely had. And the thing is, it leads to stuff upstream too. So basically, your rib cage is also affected by this. It gets compressed front to back. And this can affect your aesthetics because, for example, if your rib cage is compressed in the back, and let's say you're doing lateral raises to train your side delts, which are pretty important for aesthetics, if that space is compressed, then your scapula can't properly upwardly rotate, and you're gonna have a harder time really getting your side delts and using relative motion for lateral raises. So really, it can affect not just sort of your hips and anterior pelvic tilt and all that, but even stuff upstream, because really everything's connected. And also later in this video, I'll show you a few things that I'm doing to help correct these issues. By the way, if you're someone who's starting out skinny like I did, and you want one-on-one personal help, as well as full guides on training and bulking and stuff, then click the link in the description. Okay, now that we've gone over some downsides, let's talk about what muscles deadlifting actually trains. Because if we really look at it, It's like, even if you're not getting too messed up, even if you can hinge properly, even if you're not getting too compressed from deadlifting, if you just look at the benefits in terms of really aesthetics and bodybuilding, I just don't think it really makes up for it. And basically, the main muscles it trains is going to be, obviously, I'd say spinal erectors is going to be basically number one. Aside from that, it's going to be hamstrings, maybe a little bit of glutes, maybe a little bit of upper traps. I don't think it trains forearms enough because, let's be real, just training your forearms through passive grip, especially just from deadlifts, is not going to be enough. You're going to want to isolate them. So really, in terms of aesthetics, spinal erectors are not too important, and also you're probably getting enough of that from if you do RDLs, or if you're doing any other sort of hinge related movement, or like barbell rows or anything like that. Also, upper traps, you can isolate those pretty easily, and once again, they're probably not super important for aesthetics, and you can probably get all the upper trap stuff you need from other variations, shrugs, etc. And if you literally just switch to doing RDLs with a lighter weight and actually focusing on putting the weight in sort of the inside edge of your foot and internally rotating and actually like properly hinging, you're going to be getting the hamstring growth and the glute growth and also some spinal erectors, but just not going super heavy and just messing yourself up. And you know what? Honestly, I still do it sometimes just because it's fun. But it's just important to know how these things can affect you and sort of the secondary consequences of what you're doing. Because that's what most people don't really think about, is the second order consequences of doing a deadlift. Like, what is that really impacting? How is that going to change your posture and sort of like how, your muscles act? Because especially for me, it could be creating a lot of interference with other goals, like aesthetics. If that's my main goal, if I have a bunch of anterior pelvic tilt, then my gut is going to be like sticking out more, and it's just not going to be aesthetic. And obviously, that's going to affect upstream too. Like I said about the rib cage, that's going to have, you're going to be pulled down in the front, forward head posture. It's just, it's not good for aesthetics at all. And obviously, it's not like deadlifting is the main cause of all these things, but it's one thing that really contributes to it. And also, when you consider the muscles it trains, it's like, what are we even doing? It's like you can hit those muscles with other things. Now, some things I'm doing to try to fix some of these issues, especially when it comes to anterior pelvic tilt, is, first of all, it's nothing to do with stretching your hip flexors or strengthening your glutes or whatever. Basically, one exercise is where you're basically just a foot length away from the wall, and you're sort of in this kind of high wall sit position. And by the way, exercise credit goes to Connor Harris and also Zach Couples and a few other people. But basically, you're just in a position where your center of gravity is behind you, and you're basically just going to breathe in and out. It's all in the breathing. And you're basically just keeping your hips, knees, and feet in line. Once again, keeping your pressure in the inside edge of your foot. And you can also do like a low reach kind of. You're basically just trying to like stack your rib cage and your pelvis and have your center of gravity behind you to try and correct that. Because really, anterior pelvic tilt is kind of a forward center of gravity. Also, another kind of like staple, I guess, is a hook lying position where you're basically lying on your back and your hips are flexed. Once again, just keeping everything straight, kind of like the high wall sit, but you're just laying on your back. So this could be a bit easier because you don't have to deal with gravity as much. And same thing, it's all in the breathing. Just silent, soft inhale through the nose and sort of like sigh out. But yeah, if you want some more exercises and stuff, then I would probably just check out either Zach Couples or Connor Harris. I mean, there's a few people out there. But really, just the key takeaway here is like, powerlifting does not equal aesthetics. Because when you're doing that, you're using orientation to move a weight from point A to point B. And that's not going to be the most efficient way to actually target a muscle to grow it. Because when you're doing that, that's pretty inefficient. Because you're not going to be as strong when you're just targeting one muscle. But if you sort of lock up joints, spread out the force, you're going to be able to lift more weight. But that's not as good for aesthetics. Now, I'm not saying that you can't deadlift or that it won't give you any benefits. It still could give you some benefits, but I'm just saying to be aware of the potential interference with other things and just maybe do some things to help correct it if you notice that you're having problems. Yeah, once again, if you want a fully customized workout plan, link in the description. But yeah, I'll see you in the next one.